Tech by Tips.
Hello and welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video, we're going to make another pause in our Introduction to Azure DevOps series, and we're going to cover a video request that we have received. And this video request is going to be a very interesting application that I'm pretty sure you're going to love because it becomes part of our series of the home theater PC using a Synology NAS. And first of all, I want to thank Travis West because we received that donation from Travis West. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. It helps me, it motivates me to continue creating quality content for you guys whenever I receive support for doing this. So let's talk about this request. Apologies, I have several requests already in the queue, but I'm trying to get the applications that I'm more familiar with, that I have used, done first. So I still have others there in the queue that I plan to release, but I'm going to try to get over the ones that I found useful first. In this case, this request is for the application named Overseerr. I was honestly not very familiar with this app before until I received this request and I started getting into finding out what it does. And I was glad this person sent that request. JK-LAS-FJKL, thank you very much for this request, because this application was something that I was looking for a while. Not because of the main features that they offer, it's kind of an additional feature that they have, but I'm going to cover that. This application is really good and should be part of your home theater PC experience because it allows you to allow members of your family or people that live where you live to place requests for content that then is retrieved by Sonar and Radar, which is the applications for TV, anime, and movies, and it connects with Plex very nicely. I really recommend it. And the main feature that I liked of this is a feature that in the R's is not there, it just lacks. That I used to get with the previous applications that I use. I used to use Sickbeard or Sickrage, for example, before, and the feature that I liked was new content that was coming up, it would suggest content to me, and this application does that, and I think it's great because if you're not always paying attention to the news about new series or movies that are coming out, etc., you can get details about that suggested to you, and then you can add it to your queue or just be aware of it, so when it comes in theaters you can go to the theaters and watch it there to support the creators, etc. So I think it's a good application, so let's get to that. Let's discuss how to set it up and how it works. Alright, so let's get to setting up the container in our Synology NAS. First of all, somebody asked me before in one of the comments, why did I have some of these containers turned off? And I do that because this is a virtual NAS for the creation of the video series. This is not my actual NAS that I'm using for myself in my home, so that's why I don't really need them running. I only turn them on whenever I'm recording a video and I need connectivity to any of those apps. For example, in this video we're going to have Radar and Sonar because we need to get some information out of those, so that's why I have those two turned on. And okay, let's get to that. Let's go into our registry and we're gonna look for Overseerr. And as usual, we're gonna go for the Linux server image. It's a very trustworthy image. It's a good place and they maintain their images very well. So we're gonna right click and download this image. And we're gonna wait for the prompt to pick the version. We're gonna select the latest because, as I said in a previous video, if you use the latest tag, it is easier to just update the container by just downloading the latest version of the latest tag and then just resetting your container. So I like that more. So click select, and now we're going to wait a little bit until that image is downloaded. It has finished downloading, and as we can see, we get that notification here telling us that we have successfully gotten that image. So when we go down here, we should see Overseerr. It's 696 megs. It's a little bit big compared to other images, but that's okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to deploy that image. So we're going to select it, double click it, and that is going to give us the prompt to start setting up all the configurations. We don't do anything here, so we click next And the first thing that I usually do is make sure that this is just named Overseerr. And in this case, I'm going to enable auto restart and resource limitation. I want this to not take any more than 2 gigs of RAM in the worst case. So I set that up and CPU priority low. And then here we're going to go into the advanced settings as we usually do, because we need to set up some environment variables here. So we go and click the add button 3 times because those are the usual that we need to add because they're not present in here. So the first one is the time zone. In my case, it'll be America, New York. Then the process user ID, which by default for the first user that you create when you create your NAS, that user is going to be 1026, and the group for that user is going to be 100. So that's PGID. So now we have our time zone, our user ID, and our group ID in there. So those are the 3 variables that we need to add. If you don't know how to get these values, if you're using a different account other than the administrator account, I already created a video explaining how you get that, so you can go back in the playlist and look for that video. Now we save this, then we're gonna go next here. By default, the container is gonna be listening on port 5055, but we're not gonna use that one. We're trying to stay close, all of our applications close together. And we had basically 8080 all the way up, and I think I created another app that used 8079, so now we're going to go down a little bit to 8078. That's the port that we're going to use for the user interface of our application, and that's the only port that we need to expose, so we click next. The next thing that we need to do here is we need to set up a folder that is going to have our configuration for this application. So I'm going to click on the add folder button. I'm going to go into Docker configs, and in here I don't have a folder yet for Overseerr, so I need to go here and click create folder and create one for Overseerr, and now we can select that, and that's going to be mapped to the /config folder inside the container, where that's where usually Linux server store the configuration files for all the applications that they package. So that's why we're doing this. So what does it mean? When the container is running and it creates configuration files, that's going to be this directory is going to be mapped to this NAS folder that we're specifying here. So whatever it creates inside the container is actually going to be in the folder in our NAS, so that if we reset our containers, we don't lose the configurations of our container because that's safely stored in our NAS. So it comes back again as a new container, but then it remounts this folder and everything looks like it was before, and everything keeps working as it was before. Now we click next, we validate that the information is correct, and we leave that checked so that it immediately creates that container. So we're going to do that. We click done, and we're going to give it a little bit of time for it to go and create the container Overseerr. So we go here, we click it to select it, and then we click details, and then we go into the log section so we can monitor the state of our application. And there we go, we're starting to see progress here. We see different logs, and that's what I wanted to see. I don't know why it took so long this time, but it's okay. So we keep refreshing until we see here we go, server ready on port 5055. That means that the container is already listening on port 5055, and we're exposing that to 8078. So now we should be able to go into the IP of our NAS :8078, and we should get some response from this container showing us a user interface. And here we are. This is our user interface, and that's how you set up the container. That's the first step in our process. So now we're going to go ahead and configure it inside the application, configure the application itself. Okay, now it's time to configure the application, and as you can see here, the application basically works synchronized with your Plex server. So when you are going to log into the application, you have to do it through Plex. So the first thing is you have to sign in, and then it's going to prompt you for your Plex account so that you can connect to the Plex server that you have. So you sign in with that, And once you sign in, then it's going to give you the interface to configure the connection to Plex. So in this case, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click here to load the servers that are available. And as you can see here, it's showing me several servers. This one. And I don't need to change anything here. The port is the default. The IP is there. Okay, I needed to click there. That was kind of weird because the save button was grayed out, so it didn't look like I could click there. But the good thing is once it connects to that server, then it automatically finds your libraries, and then you're able to just enable those libraries here, and then it'll be able to sync with your library from Plex. And then you can come down here and do manual library scan too. You can click here to sync the libraries, and once you start the scan, then it'll find all the content that you have in your libraries and populate it in the Overseerr application. So we have to give it a little bit of time here to do that, to synchronize with all the different libraries that you may have in your Plex server. So let's come back when that's done. Okay, it seems to have completed. It didn't take that long. So now we can click on continue, and then it's gonna prompt us for the configuration of radar and sonar. So those are things that we need to do. So first we click here where it says radar, and in here we're gonna say that this one that we're gonna configure is gonna be our default server. If you plan to have 4K content on the server, then you check this. If not, then don't check it. In my case, I don't. I have like 720p and 1080p content mostly, so I don't even need to enable this. There's very few content that I have in 4K. And then here I would name the server, so this will be radar, and then I would put the IP of my NAS, and then the port, which for radar is 8083 if I'm not mistaken. And then we need the API key from radar. That's why I had those containers up. So we go into the settings, and in here we go into general, and there we can get the API key. So we copy that and we put it in here. And then in here, the quality profile, it says you can test what quality you can get by testing the connection to the server. So we can do that by clicking test here, and then we can see all the different quality profiles. So let's say that for radar movies I want HD 1080p, and for on the root folder is going to be this one, HTPC media movies, which is what I configured in my NAS after some changes to improve performance. And then the minimum availability that I want is how early do I want it to start looking for the movies or to become available, right? So you can wait until the movie is released, or you can start looking for it when the movie is out in the cinemas, or you can just add it when it has been announced but the movie is not out yet. I just normally put it in announced. And in here, the tags, there's nothing. The external URL, nothing. You can enable scan here, so it can scan the content of radar and notify Overseerr. And in here, you leave the enable automatic search on. And then for the tag request, it allows you to tag the requests with the name of a user. So for example, if I have a user in Plex that is, let's say for example, my kids or my wife, right? Or my mother or something like that. They could have a user created in the Plex server, or they could have their own Plex account, and then whenever they log in to Overseerr with their Plex account and they place a request, then that's gonna tag the request with a user ID. So I like that. It's a good feature to have, especially if you have a family or friends that live with you and you want to be able to allow them to request content. So here, once we have that, we click add server, and now we have our radar server connected. Now we have to do the same with sonar. So we come here into sonar, we say this is going to be the default, we're going to name it sonar, and we're going to put the IP of our NAS, and it's going to be 8082 for this one. As we configured it before, we need to get that API key, so we go into sonar, we go into settings general and we grab this API key and we put it here, and then we test our connection again, and then we can pick our quality profile. By default I tend to go in 720p, that's my preference at home. You can pick whatever, there's Ultra HD if you want to go all the way up there, and SD standard definition if you want to go there too. Oh, I clicked out of there, that's really bad. So you can pick any there. My preference is 720, so that's what I'm going to keep. The root folder here we have two, so we have to remember we have one for TV and we have another one for anime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it twice basically. And here for the language profile I'm going to select English. It already knows about the anime, so I can say anime is also 720p, and then the root folder for this one's going to be media anime, and the profile is going to be English in my case. And here there's no tags. Then for the content we want to see some folders, we want to enable it to scan, and we also want to enable tag requests. So now we add the server, and now we have our Sonar default server, our Radar default server with all the different content that they have. So now we can finish setup, and then we'll get our interface here in Overseerr. And as you can see, it will populate things that you have added in your library. For example, in this library I have things like the Wonka movie that came out last year, Doctor Strange, that's really old, 2016, an old anime series that's really good and I love, which is Gintama, and new things that are going to be coming up. For example, Echo, it's in there. And so you see the content that was recently added to your applications. So for example, Sonar and Radar, if you will have content there that you have added to look for, it's going to be here, and if you already have it, it's also going to show up here. And this is the part that I really love about this application, the trending section and the popular movies and all of that, because it shows you content that is currently popular, that is being watched by people, that is available, and it's, you know, it's important right now. It's the things that people are watching and the new things that are coming out, and you'll find a lot, like even like Indian content. Like we saw something here that was from Indian police force. We have like typical Hollywood movies, you have independent movies, you have series and all of that. So here's in trending, and then if you scroll down a little bit more, then it's going to be specifically the popular movies right now. And you'll find weird movies in here, which is really good if you are into that kind of stuff. You'll find the popular movies there, and you can keep on scrolling to see the different suggestions that it gives you. And if you go down here, you can also get suggestions based on the movie genre, for example. And in here is another nice thing that I like, which is showing you the movies that are going to be coming up that are not out yet. And this is what I love the most about this application. For example, we have Godzilla vs. Kong, which comes out this year. So you can actually request this file to be added to your Radar collection, and it'll do it whenever that's available. It's going to pick it up for you, and you see all of these different movies from all places, all kinds of movies, indies, Indian, Korean, all you can imagine. You can find it here. But there's even more good stuff here, because for example, you can actually search for content that belongs to a specific studio or company. So if you're interested in Disney movies, there's a whole section here about Walt Disney Pictures. If you're into 20th Century Fox, 20th Century Studios, you can click there and it'll show you information about movies of that studio. So this is really good. This is really, really good. And then we have the same thing, but for series. So in this case, we have the popular series, you know, series that are out that you can watch. And then you can find out if something came out and you have missed on it, or if there's a series that you liked and you were not following recently and maybe something came out, you're going to see that here too. Also, you have the option here to search by the series genre. So you have animation, comedy, etc. You can find all that stuff here, which will narrow it down more to the type of content that you want. And again, we have another section for upcoming series. So this means that these series are not out yet. They have been announced, they're in the process, and they have not yet been released. For example, the Fallout series that is coming out in 2024. Or for example, the Masters of the Air that is also coming out. Or the Laser Vendor, which is a nice one that is coming out that I'm paying attention to. So you get this option here to see from a lot of different types of series from different countries, etc. And another thing that is really good here is that the same as we had with studios, in here we have networks. You know now that Netflix has their own individual content that is exclusive to them. Disney Plus has their exclusive content, especially anything related to Star Wars or like Disney movies, cartoons and stuff like that. Amazon has their own series that you should check out too, especially if you have Amazon Prime. For God's sake, that's already included in your membership, and there's a lot of good stuff there. And there's Apple TV, Hulu, HBO, etc. You can just continue going here and you can figure out which content is available from different platforms, that then you can become aware of what's available out there. So this is the main page. So this is what we see once we have configured it, but let's just validate that there's nothing else that we are missing. So I'm going to click into settings, and in settings then we're going to be loading the full set of configurations that are available for the application, and I'm just going to go over it to make sure that there's nothing here that we're missing. So first we have the API key, which if we were to need that in the future, we can get it from here. And then here's where you set up the application title. That's what shows up at the very tab that you're using in your browser. And here, so we have that. There's nothing to change there. I don't need to use a proxy. I don't need CSRF protection, and I don't need image caching. So for me, that's not necessary. I don't set that up. Here you can specify the language that is going to be used to display the interface. In my case, I'm going to leave it as English. And discover region, here you can filter your region. So the content that is suggested to you is based on the region that you specify. If you leave it as all regions like I have it, then you're going to see content from everywhere, from Korea, from India, from the US, from South America, from Europe. Everything's going to be available there for you. If you want to filter that down, you can just come here, pick your country, and it's going to be more in line with what you will normally see in your region. And here for discover language, you can also add different languages or just leave it as all languages. Here you can just filter like that. I don't really have an option there. I just look for the series that I like, and I don't really care much about the languages. So yeah, in here there's really nothing to change, so I'm just gonna skip this, and we're gonna go into the users tab here. And in here you can set up settings regarding your users and what they can do. For example, you can enable local signing, so this allows users to sign in using their email address and password instead of using the Plex authentication. So you can do that if you want, or you can disable it if you want them only to use the Plex authentication. So you can create your own users here, and then they'll be able to log in without having a Plex account. I leave it checked as a default, and here if you leave this as a default too, it allows Plex users to sign in without first being imported. And additionally, global movie request limit, you can set up a limit here of how many requests can be placed. The same for the series. I have it as unlimited. I really don't want to limit that. And then we go into the default permissions for the users, right? So I like to give my users in my household the request permissions, so they can request movies and they can request series. But I also like to give them auto approve, so that whenever they submit a request, it immediately gets approved and sent to Radar or Sonar. So if we continue going down, there's really nothing else that I enable here, so I'm going to save this. That's what I prefer. You can read up on all of the options you have available here and change it to however you want. I'm just showing you what I have. You can pick whatever you want. Then we go into the Plex tab, and in here is where we have our configuration that we did when we just opened the application, where we connect to our Plex server. And we have our Plex libraries here, and you can trigger manual library scans here if you want. And if you use Tautuli, then you can come here and configure that too. I don't use Tautuli, so I'm just gonna leave it blank. I don't have to change anything here. Then we're going to go into the services here, and that's where we're going to see what we configured before, which is our radar instance and our sonar instance. We have already configured this, so there's really nothing to do there. So I'm just going to skip it, and I'm going to go into the notifications. In here, if you want to get notified in any way, for example, when someone places a request or a request is approved or stuff like that, you can do it. There's many ways you can do it. You can do it with an email, you can do a web push, you can connect it to Discord. There's many ways here that you can do it. I honestly don't use it, so I'm not going to do anything here, but I just want you to be aware that this is an option that you have, and if you find it useful, go ahead and configure it. Next thing, if you want to see the logs, we're going to click on the logs section here, and we will see stuff that has happened into our server. All our configurations, all our jobs, all of that stuff is going to be here. So if you want to troubleshoot something, you'll come here into the logs and look for that. And if you go into the jobs and cache section, here you'll see the different jobs that get triggered by Overseerr. And you can come here and run them manually if you want, or make changes to it. For example, you have that the Plex recently added scan job runs every 5 minutes or so, maybe less. So you can see here when's the next time that it's going to run and what type of job it is. This is just a process, and if you need to do it, you can come here and do it manually there. So that's how you see that. And here's the cache. So for any requests that are placed to Overseerr, you can see the cache of the requests. And here for the images, you also have that if you enable in the settings to use to cache images. I don't do that, so that's why you don't see anything here. But be aware that the jobs are here. You can trigger them manually. You can edit them here if you want to change, for example, when you want it to execute. Like for example, this one, instead of being 6 hours, I want it to be every 3 hours, so I can come here and edit it. And now if we click on the about section here, it's just going to give us details about the Overseerr application, which version we're running, if we're up to date or not, how many media files we have, how many requests are pending, where's our data stored. In this case, it's in the config folder, which is our time zone that we configured, in my case America, New York. It gives you access to the documentation of Overseerr, to see the GitHub discussions and the Discord channel if you want to join them. And if you want to support them, which I suggest you do because it's a good application, you can go here and donate to their links here that they have provided, and you can see all the releases and the details on the different versions that have been released here. So that's all the settings for the applications here. So now another thing that I find very useful is that, remember we said you can have users that are created locally. So if we go into the users section here, then you'll see what users you have. In my case, in this virtual NAS, I only have my Plex user because that's the only thing that I have created. And I'm the owner of this instance, so that's why it says I'm the owner. And when I joined, in this case, it was the day of today, it was January 19th, 2024. I have not placed any requests, so that's what you see. But you have the option here to either import users from your Plex account if you have created those, or you can just create a local user like it said there, where the person can just log in using a password. So you have that option here if you want to create a user or if you want to import other users from Plex. And here's where you manage your users. I'm not going to go really into details, but you can come here, edit, configure. That's all up to you what you want to do. There's really nothing extraordinary here to explain. So then if we go into the issues here, if we were to have any issues, then they will show up here. I have never honestly seen anything happen that shows up here, so just take it with a grain of salt. If there's any issues, they're going to be here, but I have never seen any so far. And here, if you have requests, in my case, for example, I have my requests to auto approve. So when I place a request, it'll automatically get approved and sent to Sonar or Radar, right? So in here is where you would come if you don't have it configured that way. If you have it configured to be approved manually, then you can come here and you'll see the pending, using the pending filter, and you'll see a list of all the requests that are pending, and then you can approve them here if necessary or deny the request. It's up to you, but here's where you would do that. Like I said, I don't have it configured like that, so you won't see anything here, but this is where you come to do that. If you want to see the content that you have, you can click on the series, for example, here, and then you can find series that you want in here. You can use the search here to filter it down, but this is going to give you basically, because I don't have all of this, this is things that it suggests for you because they're popular, people are watching stuff, people have added that to their Overseerr, and that's why I suggest it. If you have it, then you will have a mark here, for example, like this green button here tells me that this is a series that I have added. But if I have not added it, then you will not see that. But you can go in here and filter for different content, and you'll notice when you have something because of that green button attached to that poster of that content or not. And the same goes for the movies. If you click on the movies here, then you'll just see movies, and then if you have a movie, then it'll have the check mark in there, so you will know what you have and what you don't have, and then you can just request content there. So this is just an example. So if you want to add something, you can do it directly here. You can search for something. For example, let's go into the Discover because that's where we see the stuff that is coming up. So let's go into the upcoming movies, for example. Right, if we want to add a movie, for example, Dune, that is coming in 2024, then I can just highlight it here, and then we'll see the request button here. If I click this request button, what it's going to do is it's going to submit the request, but since I have it configured to automatically approve it, it is just going to send it to my radar application. So it'll automatically says this request will be approved automatically, and then it says here that I can pick which quality I want that to be retrieved at. So I can leave it in my default, or I can change it if I want. So you have that opportunity, and then I can press the request button, and then that actually submits the request. And then as you can see, we have not a green button because we don't have a file named that, right? So it just tells you that we're waiting for that to be released to then grab that content. And it works the same way with the series. So for example, if we want to add the Fallout series, we would come down here, click request, and then in here the difference is that TV shows and anime shows usually have different seasons. So you have the option here to specify only one season, or if you click here, it'll pick all of the seasons for this show. So let's say all, and then here we can specify, for example, the quality that we want to download. You can leave it at the default, or you can change it for the specific series. And in here you can change the root folder if necessary. Since this is a series, I'm going to leave it at TV, and then I'm just going to request it. And that request is going to go, and it's going to be requested. And then as you can see, it has a yellow button here that tells us that we don't have it. We're just waiting for it to be available. And if you click there on the poster, then you come into the details about this series. That's another thing I wanted to show. And it works the same way for the movies. And then in here you can see if you have requested it or not, and you can see information about the story, you can see information about the cast, you can see tags that are associated with that content, all the information about the episodes. At this moment there's nothing because it's not defined yet, but once it's defined you'll see that. And then you can get suggestions, which is another thing that I love about this application, about series based on content that you have and that you want. So it suggests you other things in here. So that's basically all about Overseerr, all the things that I wanted to show you, how you configure it, how you set up the application. I hope you like it. I hope you find this useful. Know that all the stuff is automatically sent here. For example, I added a series, Fallout, and it, as you can see, it has already synced to Sonar, and it's here. And I added a movie, and if you go here, you'll see that Dune is also added here. So you'll see that the content is going to be looked for by radar and sonar once that becomes available. So you can validate that it works by going into your R's and checking that it shows up in there. So everything is good, everything is working properly, and that's going to be it for this video. I hope you like it. I hope you find this application useful. Thank you very much for the donations. Thank you very much for the subscriptions. We have managed to get about 900 people already subscribed to the channel, so I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here and for supporting me. I try to answer all your comments as soon as possible. If you leave me a comment and I haven't replied yet, it's because I'm a little busy with work and stuff, so please understand that. But I'm here to kind of be your guide, if possible, into all of this technological things that you might be trying to dip your hands into, especially open source applications. So remember, if you like the content, like, subscribe, share the videos. If you like the content and you want to support me so that I can continue creating content of quality for you so that you can learn how to do this stuff on your own, feel free to donate in the links in the description below. And that's going to be it for this video. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.